everybody. Welcome to our Be Like Berl Podcast, where we interview folks about a tragedy, trial, or tribulation they dealt with as a child, and Jesus brought them through it by using folks in their lives who were being like Berl. Today's guest is here, but before I hand it over to Rachel, remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Rachel?
All right, so today on our podcast, we are welcoming Westen Jones. You guys might remember hearing about Kaylee in a few podcasts ago, and this is her husband, Westin. So we're going to explore a little bit about him today and find out, Westin, you can go ahead and tell us. We're just going to open the floor to you and let you tell us what tragedy, trial, or tribulation you dealt with as a child.
Well, I guess it really started young for me. I mean, when I was at an early age, I started, and I guess it helped with my brothers and sisters also doing it at the time and being around it all the time, you know. So when I was 8 years old, I started, smoking pot on a regular basis with my brothers and sisters. And then, by the time I would say probably 12 years old, I started, smoking on a regular basis, pretty much every day, and buying it myself from, people around the neighborhood. And my father, he was, or my stepdad actually, he was an alcoholic, and I would sneak in there and get alcohol from him sometimes, and stuff like that. And that kind of started me out drinking at a young age too. And, then I kind of started messing around with pills and, other stuff like that. Xanax being the main one that I really, kind of took to. I did Xanax for 3 years pretty hard, from about 13 up until I was about 16, I would say.
And all of this started in childhood when dad was, or stepfather. So you had put on here that you don't know dad, right? So this is stepfather.
Yeah, I never met my real father. My mom's told me his name a couple of times, I'm pretty sure, but I've never been able to remember it. So it wasn't really ever a big deal to me not knowing my real father, so.
Of our guests, you're definitely the one that probably had the youngest.
Yeah,
I would say.
Sure.
I mean, 8 years old, that's incredible. That you were already starting to be into that world and starting to smoke marijuana, and then you messing with the drinking to start it at 8 is really incredible.
Yeah, and it's pretty crazy when you think about it, but it was kind of a funny thing for my sisters and brothers at the time, because they were probably, my sister that has passed away now because of her problems, was probably 16 at the time, maybe. It's hard to think how much older she is than me at the time.
What about, so just thinking for a second, what was mom, I mean, was she, was drugs and alcohol something for her too, or did she just
when
kind of
she was young? Yes, because
Okay.
she had me at 40, right? She had me at 40 years old, 10 years after she had her tubes tied, and so I was completely unexpected birth for her, I'm sure. But when in her younger years, yeah, she messed around. I mean, she left home at 16, and by the time she was 18, she was in Guam, halfway across the world, serving drinks in bars and stuff like that. And then, she made it back to the States eventually and hitchhiked all around the United States and
Wow.
did all kinds of, psychedelics and stuff like that at the time, That was the thing to do back in those days, the 80s, I guess it was,
So, what was mom's take on you guys? I mean, you're young. Did she know what was going on?
No, she didn't really know that I did anything up until I was probably about 13. And she, I guess, kind of started noticing differences in me, and stuff. Because that was when I started really messing around with drinking alcohol and doing Xanax and stuff like that. And so she probably noticed something there different with me around that age. And then I went ahead and told her that I smoked pot at 13, and she wanted to know how long I'd been doing it, and I told her, well, my brothers, they thought it was funny to get me to smoke when I was 8 years old. They thought it was a funny thing to do with them and their buddies and whatnot. And, it just kind of took. And there was a guy around the neighborhood, and he was probably in his 20s. And I would go and get, bud and stuff from him. And it got to the point where I was getting enough from him and enough from babysitting my nieces and nephews at the time to go buy more for me and to sell a little bit to my buddies, around school and around the neighborhood. So, it was...
I still got to go back to a comment. We've almost flown past it, but the whole that your mom's tubes were tied.
Right.
I got to go back to that because it's like, wait a minute. Let me revert back. So her tubes were tied, and so you weren't even supposed to exist.
No, she had her tubes tied right after my sister, and that was in 85. And I look on my arm because she's passed away now, and I've got her birth and death date on my arm. But that was in 85. She got her tubes tied, and I was born in 93, so almost 10 years, I guess.
So
Wow. I say that to say God really needed you born,
Yeah.
and it's amazing.
So I can't imagine being in a position where my siblings are getting me to do stuff, and that's obviously not a world that I came from, but I'm sure there are so many kids out there that are experiencing stuff like that. Like,
Oh, yeah. And see, that's the thing. I think about it now, and it was normal. That was a
Right,
normal
yeah.
environment for me,
Yeah.
just my brothers and sisters smoking. And then, as of course they got older and of legal age, they started drinking. My sister, boy, she partied all the time. She was always out at bars and whatnot. She liked to be around people and have fun,
right. But I could see now if, like, Ava did something and got Ezra involved in something that he wasn't supposed to. Yeah. I can see now as like
I don't
a
like
parent.
thinking about that.
Yeah, you guys would be like, absolutely not. Like that's not how
Well, and
we roll.
that's a double standard a lot of parents will have. Because there's many times Rachel's looked at me and said, well, that's a double standard because you and I did that when we were little. And I was like, yeah, okay. What's your point? It's
Right.
still not going to happen to mine.
All right, so talk to us a little bit about your sister.
My sister, Corrine, she, like I said, she enjoyed partying a lot, and she was a great person. I really loved her, and she got hard on, pills. Opiates specifically. I'm not sure which ones because I was never really into opiates as much. I did take some, of course, throughout the years, but she got hard onto opiates and started selling them and stuff like that at the end. And she had 4 kids by then, and I think 2 or 3 of them were at the house at the time, and because they would stay at their dad's house, that her and their fathers, a lot of their fathers were split up. She was split up from them, she had 3 different fathers for her kids. So they were all split up, but at the time there was just 2 or 3 of them at the house. And she went to the end of the driveway to sell some pills one day. And the guy that she bought them from, or was buying them from her, decided, hey, I'm gonna take them instead of paying for them, and he stabbed her 36 times and then choked her until she was dead in the driveway. It started in his car. She got in his car, and that's where he started stabbing her, and then she got out running, of course, and then he chased her down and choked her out in the driveway in the ditch. and left her, and then I guess got intoxicated on the pills that he stole from her, and the police found him several miles down the road, just not really very far, and was passed out in his car. Her shoe and her purse, I believe, was still in the car with him.
Wow.
One of her shoes and her purse. And he was passed out, covered in blood still. So
were you still doing drugs then? Were you still smoking pot?
No, I was actually living up here at the time. By then, me and Kaylee was together. And we was at a friend's house, a little get-together, and having a good time. And then my mom called me. And she was like, I've got bad news, Your she's gone. Someone murdered her in our driveway.
So I kind of thought when I was reading through some of this that your sister might have been your sobering turning point. But what was a sobering turning point for you?
My kids, because I had quit long ago when I was younger doing the pills and stuff. The pills and all that I stopped doing that when I was like 17, because I realized, it was stupid and dumb, and the Xanax was harder to get off of than any of the other stuff I ever tried. I've experienced a little bit. I've never done anything extremely hardcore, but I've done ecstasy a couple times. I've done acid. I've dropped acid a couple times. I've done shrooms. Several different kinds of pills like Percocets and Lortabs and Xanax and different stuff like that. But all that was pretty much done with. And
you just realized that just doing that was just not the life you wanted to live. Wasn't.
Yeah, it just wasn't conducive to what I wanted to be as a person, who I wanted to be as a person. It just and it got old. It got old really quick, which was good. For some people it doesn't do that. It takes hold and can't ever get rid of it.
And some of that may speak to how, I know, intelligent you are. I've heard people talk about how smart you are before. And so being so smart and intelligent, you probably saw that was just kind of a dumb way to live for you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And a lot of it was, too, seeing my stepfather being an alcoholic and my sister, who at the time was still alive, still, drinking and having a good time, partying, but also me seeing that all the time and not really being there for her kids like she should have been,
right?
Maybe. But, yeah, I saw it as a sign, I guess you could say, to be like, hey, you could be different. They have made some mistakes, and you have too, but you're still young enough to change that without really any severe repercussions in life. So
how old were you when you kind of woke up to this?
I was probably 17, 18 when I stopped doing the majority of the things I was doing. And a lot of it had to do with moving back and forth. I'm originally from Tennessee, but I was raised in Mississippi, and all my family is spread out. So we would travel several times a year, and stuff like that. And then we also moved back and forth, a few years at a time, and then move back and then move back and forth, So a lot of that had to do with, not being around people that were doing it, Right. I would move away from certain groups of friends and then have to start fresh. And so, I wouldn't be around it for a while, and then I would meet people that were doing it. So I would dabble back into it a little bit. And then, I got older and had the realization that, this is not smart. So maybe I should try and straighten up. And then I got to the legal age of drinking, right? And that's when I started drinking really hardcore. I mean, when I was young, I would drink and mix Xanax. I would steal some of my stepdad's alcohol, and I would take it back into the room, and I would crush up some Xanax and mix it in with the shot and take a couple of those, and for a normal person, one full strength Xanax, it's like a bar. It looks like a bar and you can break it into 4 pieces, right? And that's like the full strength you can get for a Xanax. And I would take one of those and put it in a shot and drink it, crush up a whole nother one, put it in a shot and drink it. And I'm 14, 15 years old at the time. And I would go to school like that. I would take a couple before school and smoke some weed before school, getting on the bus, and just be completely dazed out throughout the day, Didn't really do good in school.
And for you, though, that was, I mean, like you said earlier, that I think that'll go a long way for some people. For you, it was just normal.
Yeah.
I mean, at that age, when you were that young, and it was like, because that was just the environment that you were in. So I'm like, that's no big deal.
All my buddies, a lot of my buddies smoked weed and stuff like that. So it wasn't hard to come by. Unfortunately, it wasn't hard to come by even for a kid. At the time you think, like, what is this? Why does this kid have access to this kind of stuff and how? But it's easier than you think it is to come across that kind of stuff.
It was just right there in your neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was a guy that lived right across the street, and he had some, I guess you could say, mental disorders, and he was prescribed Xanax. So I would go get some from him with my babysitting money, And then there was this girl I was talking to when I was little, and her sister was disabled and had some anxiety problems as well, and they were prescribed Xanax, so I would go and get them from her, So there would just be different avenues you could go down to get stuff.
You absolutely, though, drove a nail into one of the problems with our nation, being overly medicated, because not only are the people themselves being overly medicated, but it's giving access to so many people that don't need to in these neighborhoods.
Well, it shows just how easy, though, it is. And if a 13, 14-year-old kid can, find a workaround and get a hold of something, then that's scary, for
Right.
parents.
Oh, yeah.
So parents, listen to this. Be aware. It's out there and it's available. He's here saying, Westin is saying, it was easy to get a hold of. So just kind of like a wake up call. So did you ever have to go to rehab?
No, and I think a lot of the reason I didn't is because of my mentality, my mental mentality and my fortitude for that. It was easy. It was easy for me to quit, and I hate saying that because so many people have real troubles quitting the simplest things, and it wasn't that hard for me to quit doing some of that stuff. What was the hardest for me probably was surprisingly alcohol. I got to the legal age of drinking, and that's when I really started drinking hard, and Kaylee can attest to that, and the first few years of our relationship, I was drinking pretty heavy, all the time. I could drink a fifth of whiskey in no time, no problem. And then, of course, Ava was born, and she was a real wake up, I think, to, hey, my stepdad, I spent my whole childhood watching my stepdad, be wasted most of the time, and we had troubles growing up. I never appreciated Royce, my stepdad. He was hard to get along with as a young kid.
Was he ever aggressive?
No, he was never physically aggressive. Not at all. He's very intelligent as well. He's got an IQ of like 160. He's
wow.
very intelligent, and so he could very easily be verbally offensive, I guess you would say. So that was hard to grow up with him being not, I don't know, verbally abusive maybe, but still it didn't really seem that bad to me, because I would just go to my room and just get away from him, because he would stay in his room, and drink and watch TV, and then, but yeah, I don't know. He's a good guy. I really appreciate him now as an adult. I love him more than anything now, and we get along great. But as a kid, it was hard being around him. So that kind of also helped with me seeing the reason why I needed to quit drinking, because I didn't want Ava and now Ezra to grow up seeing a father that was always intoxicated or wasted and didn't have time for them, didn't want to have time for them.
Right.
Not saying that my parents didn't ever want to have time with me, because they did. They did the best they could. My mom did the best she could, gave me everything I pretty much wanted as a kid.
Your mental strength is very impressive, Westin.
Well, thank you.
I'm very impressed with you.
Yeah, there's not many people on this earth that can say, well, that learned it on their own and was able to have the mental fortitude, it was good terminology that you use, to be able to conquer that. So
let's back up for 1 second. How did you get to, I know that you and Kaylee met at the Cracker Barrel in Dixon, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get there? Like how did you get there?
So we moved back up here to Tennessee, and I was for my 12th grade year, but because of the credit system are different from Mississippi and Tennessee, I couldn't get enrolled in my 12th grade year. So I didn't have enough credits. So I had to either go to community college, do homeschooling, or get my GED. So I just got my GED and started working. My mom started working at Cracker Barrel, and I was 19 at the time, and so she got me a job there. And because we lived in Fairview, and so I started working there, and it was probably a year that I'd been working there, and Kaylee got the job, and I don't know. I was always really shy. She could maybe say something different, but to me, I was shy, and it took a minute, I guess, for me to really talk to her. But we hit it off pretty quick, and then within a month, we were living in motels together with a couple of our buddies, and then several months after that, I think it was 9 months after that, we moved down to Mississippi with my family. And then she got pregnant, and she was like, I want to be with my parents through this time. And I was like, yeah, I completely understand. I would be too. I would want to be around my family in that situation. So we packed up and came back up here, and
been here ever since.
Been here ever since.
What? And I know I don't mean to put you on the spot with the wife not far from you, but what was it about her? I mean, you like I said, you said within it was just so short a time. You was like, I want to be with this girl.
It's hard to say, really. I mean, it was just an instant connection, I guess. We kind of clicked. It's just one of those things.
Did you know about her past?
No, I didn't really know about her past. She, rightfully so, wanted to kind of keep that secret for a little while, but she did eventually tell me.
So one of the things she said on her podcast was that you had told her no, that you weren't like about that life.
Yeah, because she wanted to do some stuff one day and brought it to the apartments we was at, and this was still within a few months of us talking and being in a relationship and whatnot. And
how hard was it to tell her no, though?
Oh, it was easy for me. I mean, I was like, I don't want to be a part of that. I've had struggles in my life, and I'm done with it, and I don't want to be around it no more.
And I had to ask that question. I actually wrote it down because I did not want to forget. And the reason I wanted to ask you is because I feel like so many people give in to something like in a relationship or as a parent. They'll give into it trying to be like a friend or good. But your I don't want to be about that life may have saved her life. And so it's just very profound that she said that on the podcast, on her podcast, that your thing was really a turnaround for her when you didn't want to be about that life. And so here you are, and you're like, no, it was easy. I just shut it down. Like, I love that.
Yeah. And I mean, at the time it was easy, and I really appreciate her for saying that's, what was the big turning point for her, just getting out freshly out of rehab. And, I mean, cause who knows if I would have said, yeah, I mean,
yeah, y'all's life
it could have went way downhill for both of us. But at the, for me, it was easy, and I was just like, no, I'm done with it. There's no point in further risking a life like that.
right.
You definitely knew where you wanted to be,
Yeah,
where you wanted to come from.
And it's just, I mean, I had a lot of fun doing the stuff I did as a young kid, I mean, it was fun, but you also got to realize like what you're doing to the people around you and what you can be doing to yourself, so you got to kind of stop and think like, hey, do I really want this? Do I really want to continue being like this?
So I do want to take a minute, if it's all right with you, to go back to the death of your sister, because that was, such a tragic event. It wasn't something
sure.
that was just, she
Don't just want to like drive past it.
right. I want to make sure she gets the attention that she deserves. Who all was at the house how long was the driveway from the house? Was there people that had seen it, or?
Yeah, down there the properties are, it's like a grid, so they're all split up into 3.5 rectangle shaped properties, right? And most of the houses are all at the very back of that. So probably 150 yards to the end of the driveway from the house, I would say. And she was all the way at the end.
Was there anybody at the house that seen what was going on?
No, there's a bunch of like brush and trees and stuff that separate the house from the road, so you can't really see up there. They just knew that she was up there and hasn't came back yet.
Did someone go to check on her?
Yeah, my stepdad, he realized that she had been up there longer than she should have been, and went and checked on her, and found her and administered CPR until help got there, which unfortunately, was too late. So
what did the killer is once he got caught, has he been sentenced and all that?
36 years of life.
Good.
One of the things you had put on here was domestic violence with family. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was like 19 at the time, and we had just moved back up here, and I was seeing this girl from Murfreesboro, and she was staying at the house, and my brother's kids were also staying there, I think at the time, staying the night or something like that. And they had went home saying that they seen my girlfriend walking around the house with no clothes on, which is not true. And so my brother, he at the time was still, him and his wife was still drinking pretty heavily, and their kids come home saying, that they'd seen my girlfriend run around the house, with no clothes on. And so they, I don't know if how it all happened, but they were intoxicated later that evening and, showed up at my stepdad's house in Fairview, and was trying to, start a fight with me and her, and we were there at the time alone. And I hid her car down by the creek so that they thought that she wasn't there, because she was scared, and because they were beating on the door and screaming and yelling and trying to get in and stuff like that. And so I'd locked all the doors, and I seen where he saw her tire tracks going through the grass, my brother, and he went down there, was screaming, I'm going to slash her tires if she don't get out of here, if she don't leave. And so I went outside and tried to stop him, and then he tried to make his way into the house, so I had to fight the knife off of him and take it from him. And luckily I had been trained to disarm weapons from people and stuff like that. So I disarmed the knife, took the knife away from him, and fought him upstairs and into the kitchen. And he grabbed another knife, so I had to take it was a kitchen knife. I had to take that away from him. And we wrestled around and wrestled back down the steps to the front door, and I ended up getting him in a choke, a rear naked choke, and choking him out until he relieved himself in his clothes, and I held him down on the ground until the police showed up, and stopped it then. I think I'd been holding him on the ground for 30 minutes, I think. Wow. Someone almost twice my size and intoxicated, and I had to hold him down for that long. And it was heartbreaking, because I know he didn't really know what he was doing. He was so intoxicated at the time, he didn't really know what was going on, and it sucked because I had to send him to jail. He had to stay in jail overnight, in his messy drawers. And I always feel bad for that whole altercation, because it didn't have to happen, and it shouldn't have happened, but it was just one of those things where you get too intoxicated and
you make bad decisions.
You make horrible decisions,
and
sometimes with your family.
You were doing everything you could to protect yourself and the girl that you was with at the time, which it's a good lead in to your martial arts background.
I was just thinking that too, but I was also going to say, do you still have a relationship with your brother now?
Oh yeah, and he now is basically sober. I mean, he drinks just as much as any casual person does, as far as I know. We don't get to see each other very much because I have a full life and they have a full life, and kids and our own jobs. And, now I'm busy from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m, Monday through Thursday because of work. And then I go and, teach and take taekwondo and stuff like that. So I'm full schedule Monday through Thursday, and then the weekends we do our own things and try and relax and stuff like that. So I don't get a lot of time to see my family now, but yeah, he's a lot better now. I love my brother and all my family. We've all had our struggles. My oldest brother has also had problems with alcohol, and my oldest sister has had problems with drugs and alcohol and abusive spouse relationships, and stuff like that. So,
and I love that you don't hold resentment, that you guys are just still we love each other. And
you can't hold resentment to someone when they're not in the right state of mind to be, you can't judge someone based on what they're doing in a time when they really don't know what they're doing. They're intoxicated or so messed up sometimes that you don't function like you normally would. So you make poor decisions,
right?
And you can't fault people for making poor decisions when they're not coherent enough to make the right ones.
So go back to where I was going a while ago. How did you get into martial arts? And it seems like that's probably helped you with your focus and helped you be able to do a lot of things that.
Yeah, I got into martial arts when I was 5 because I was being bullied at school. Like a lot of kids, they get bullied, and I got tired of it because I had really long, beautiful curly hair, and I was always said I always looked like a girl and stuff like that from people, and at school they would throw little pieces of paper and trash and stuff like that in my hair without me knowing, and I would be walking around, the halls and stuff with little pieces of paper sticking out of my hair and, being called names and stuff like that. And there was this kid that bullied me a lot on the bus. So one day I had filled my backpack with some rocks from the driveway when I was waiting one morning. And at the end of school, on the way home, I had taken one of the rocks and chucked it at this kid, and busted his head open and got in a lot of trouble for that, rightly so, But after that, my parents were just like, we've got to find an outlet for you to be able to maybe express things, anger or whatever. And I never really had anger as a kid, but, you get bullied enough, you will get angry.
Right.
And especially if you can't do nothing about it.
Right.
So I wanted to learn to do something about it if I had to.
And you're in martial arts now.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have seen.
It just received his second degree black belt.
Yep,
Yeah.
just received
Awesome.
my second degree. Yeah, that's
And teaching others.
teaching others. I really enjoy doing that. I really love teaching, kids, because you can see when they accomplish something that they didn't think they could do, how that light in their eyes and how awesome it was, for them to accomplish that. So,
Well, and so many people get a bad image of martial arts in their head. They'll think, well, all you're doing is teaching kids how to fight. No. Martial arts is actually teaches discipline. It teaches focus, and it does help a child be able to learn to take care of themselves if need be.
Yeah.
But it's not teaching kids to be violent. It's actually teaching them the other way,
Yeah.
to not be, but be prepared.
yep.
So tell us what you love about martial arts.
I just always thought it was, since I got into it as a kid, it was for defense. It was to protect myself, and then throughout the years, I really fell in love with, all the Bruce Lee movies and Jackie Chan movies. And I just thought it was just so cool to be able to do all this stuff, So I really just kind of dove into it and have done it my entire life. I never played school sports, never got into any kind of extracurricular activities through school or anything like that. It was went to school, come home, and go to taekwondo 5 nights a week. And that was my childhood. Other than some of the poor choices I made. So it was, and I still did martial arts throughout the whole time. That I did make poor decisions and stuff like that. But
I was just going to ask if that affected you at all, but
I'm sure it probably it took away from what I could be, could have accomplished faster or sooner, because you're dumbing your mind down, when you do any kind of mind altering substance, you're taking a part of that away where, you can't concentrate, you can't focus, and so I'm sure it did probably have an impact on my ability as a martial artist, so, but I feel now that I've, gotten back into it and now I'm teaching and stuff like that, that I've just found a whole new passion for it again. And, I just, something I really love to do and want to continue to do. And hopefully I can take over, a school one day, and really put my kind of stamp, I guess, on my own sort of taekwondo legacy.
I think it's really cool how God is in my mind, how God has worked full circle through your life, from the beginning of not even technically supposed to be born, and then here you are, and then you've came through so much as a child, and you've gotten attached through martial arts to find a passion, and it's brought you around to where now you're teaching kids, and you actually have a passion to love kids and teach something and give them something of yourself to make them better in their lives. I think that's a cool full circle
I know
thing.
it feels like, I see you smile about it, and I see your passion for it. You know, I know how, and I kind of look to this way because the cameras can't see it, but Kaylee's just off camera. But I see how proud Kaylee is of you doing that, and it makes me feel like, is this what God needed him for? You know, like, just because you can be, and you're going to recognize stuff in kids that other people might not, that I might not, because we've walked different lives and different paths. And so you may recognize that even before I would, and also you might know what to say better than I would know what to say, because you've been there and you can empathize with that child, and that is just so you don't realize how valuable that's going to be for some kids if it's not already been valuable for some kids.
Yeah.
One of the things that we asked on the paperwork that we send out is, who were some people that were being like Berl during your time of despair? So people that loved you through a difficult time, who offered love, truth, or kindness to you.
Definitely my mom. My mom has kind of always she's always just loved me for me, you know. She's always just been that person that was there for me no matter what and what mistakes I made, you know. And I've done some hurtful things, you know. One time I was going back to the Xanax. I was really intoxicated on Xanax one day, and I think I had taken 18 blue footballs, which is half of what the full strength pill would have been, you know. It's and I took 18 of those throughout the whole day, and ended up laying down in front of my mom's car, and because she was leaving to go to work. So I, for some reason, thought it was a good idea to lay down in front of her car and tell her, you know, she's going to have to run over me if she wants to go to work for whatever reason. I don't know what I was thinking at the time, of course, but that was one of those moments where my mom was like, you know, what is going on with my child, you know? So for her to kind of go through that, and then later on go through, you know, my sister and her problems, and, you know, Roy's kind of always being there in the background, you know, drunk at night and stuff like that. I'm sure it was really hard for her. So her to be able to just kind of stay so strong and still be a good mom, you know,
So speaking of Berls, and I don't know what just prompted me to ask this, and you don't have to answer it. We can always edit it out if you don't want to. But so growing up the way you did, and then coming up here, meeting Kaylee, who had some addiction, but you didn't necessarily know potentially at the time. But how did that go over with you coming into such a religious family, or a family that lived so differently than you? How did that go over?
Well, for me, it was definitely questionable at first, because I was already at the time heavily tattooed, you know, big, huge gauges in my ears, you know, and here she is just getting out of rehab, and then me find out that her dad's a preacher, and I'm like, oh Lord, you know, what am I getting myself into? You know, I hope, you know, I really like this girl, but I really hope that her father doesn't, you know, push God down my throat, you know, because I've never been a religious person. I've never, you know, went down that path of religion. You know, I'm a factual kind of thinker. I've always been the facts and statistics of things, you know. I've always want the proof, and so it was kind of always been hard for me to go down the religious path, you know. So it was very kind of intimidating at first, or scary, I guess you would say, you know, like, because I really liked her and I wanted things to progress, but then would her family accept me, you know? And of course, they're just the most awesome people you could ask for.
They definitely have accepted you, for sure.
Oh, 100%. And it's, you know, you remind me, I have a friend in my life that is, he believes there is a God, absolutely, but he's always had issues with, he's a very, I guess, logic based. Mm-hmm. So, you know, most of the time for him, it's like, well, if it's not tangible, if I can't see it, hear it, smell it, feel it, you know, then it's not real for me.
Which has led for some interesting conversations.
Yeah, some great conversations, from us. Where do you find yourself at now, on your religious journey?
Still, I guess you could say I'm stubborn in that kind of in that kind of sense,
okay.
because I've been involved with and gone to Hope Church now for since me and Kaylee started being together, but it still hasn't really changed any kind of way of how I think about religion or what it does bad and good for people, right? So, and then just me being a literal kind of person and factual kind of person, it's just always been hard for me to get behind the religion and what happens after, you're gone, and what your purpose in life is for, and I believe everybody has a reason for why they're here, but why it is, that's your journey and for you to find out. In my view, there's no one behind the steering wheel driving that, in my opinion, but I could be wrong,
Well, and for me, it's funny. It's funny you said that. I don't necessarily believe, because there's free will, right?
Right.
I think God wants us to have free will, and because He wants us to love Him because we want to. And so for me to see you and to see your life, and all I'm thinking of is how God brought you through this and that, and I could see a path of, here you are now teaching children, and I just, me personally, I believe that it's because God needs you He needed you at the end of the day to be to where there's a child that through martial arts that you might be able to help, or you and Kaylee have become, with both of y'all's past, you've become amazing parents.
Yes, amen.
You guys, so Ava and Ezra will be able to have parents that can see things before they go down a wrong path. So, I think it's, for me, I praise God that He brought you through all of that and put you into this position now, because there's so many good things that you can do.
And hey, I appreciate that.
It's interesting. One of our questions was, do you feel like God worked in your situation? And you were just so honest and said, I've never thought about God being the one to pull me through the fog. And I don't necessarily always review these questions with Jim or anything, because this just gives me a place to make notes. But I like that you were just honest, and you just said, I've never thought about it. It's not like you were a hard no or even a yes, but you were just like, I've never thought about it. And so from our perspective, we would say, yes, He did pull you through the fog.
Right. Well, and I love it, because I've had, in my life, I've had a lot of friends that didn't believe the way that I did. And it was interesting to have them sit back when I was working in my old job. One in particular would come in and sit in my office, and he was an atheist. And we would have some wonderful discussions
and we love him so much.
Oh yeah. And I still do to this day. And every time we see each other, we still, at the end of the conversation, I could always say, I still love you, brother. And he's the same way. And we could always hug and stuff. And I believe that, because God gave us that love, He didn't believe that, but that's okay.
Yeah.
One of the other questions we have on here is, what are some words of wisdom or things you've learned and that you want to say to folks listening that might help them get through or cope with a similar issue? And you had talked about to say no to the easy way. And I want you to elaborate on that, because I agree with you. So I want you to elaborate on what you mean.
It's easy to say yes. It's easy to say, yeah, sure, why not? We're having a good time. What's the worst that could happen? It's easy to run with the crowd and want to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
You're young.
Right.
You want to have fun, but you can also say no.
Right.
It may be harder, but in the long run, it's probably for the best.
Right. And going to be easier on you in the long run. One of the things that I had wrote down, and so I love that we kind of get this both sided take, because historically on the show it's been all about Jesus this, but I love that this is your take, being somebody who's not at the same position we are, which is totally fine. But I look like my take on this, what you said was Matthew 7:13-14, enter the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction. And the small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to a life, and only a few find it. But you're literally saying the same thing, right? You're saying like don't take the easy road. Like the easy road is not going to get you. I mean, you've seen that the easy road's taking people to destruction, and so I wrote that down last night when I was reading over your stuff. So one of the other things that we had on here to ask about is on the podcast we were going to ask you, what are any thoughts of like what not to do? So something you learned that like maybe wasn't helpful or whatever, and you had put about people who won't ask the hard questions. So do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. So just if you're a family member or parent or anyone around someone you care about that you may think may be going through a struggle or a problem, don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah.
You know, they might get upset at the time, but then again, you could be the one to help them get out of their funk.
Yeah. I love that. And I know that's probably something that you have to keep in mind with what you're doing working with the kids now too is, you know, there may be a time where you have to ask some hard questions to kids or parents.
Yeah.
And
yeah, just recently I had to talk to a couple kids, you know. I've had to talk to kids about bullying.
yeah.
You know, so being someone that has gone through it, you know, I of course understand. But they also got to realize that they're taking taekwondo and martial arts for their own defense, not to bring harm on other people. You know, so there's right times to use it and right times to not. And bullies are going to be bullies regardless, you know.
I love that. So how do you feel like your situation has helped shape you into the person you are today?
Just having a more understanding, further understanding of what potentially can go wrong, what potentially you can get into, what you need to do to maybe look out for your own kids and stuff like that. You know, just it's shaped me in so many ways. I really don't know how to explain it, you know?
Yeah. One of the things you put on here is it gave you perspective on life that you realized would just bury you if you didn't change, and you didn't want it to trickle down into your children. And so I think what you're trying to say here is that it's literally shaped you into the man. You saw examples of what not to do, and you did not want that to affect your children.
Made it a mission to be the opposite.
Yeah. I think it just again speaks volume for your mental strength to be able to just say that. So because there's so much generational trauma that happens, and you and Kaylee both are just saying that, you know, she comes from I didn't have trauma, but the addiction side of it, and you came from all of the addiction stuff, and you guys are just saying this stops here with us, like that our kids are not gonna have that. And then a little bit about life today. So what's going on for you guys now?
Well, I just recently got a new job, working at a hunting preserve, doing all kinds of stuff, really, operating equipment and just doing a lot of the stuff that I love to do, you know, use chainsaw, operate equipment, you know, mess with dogs, hunting dogs, and, you know, I enjoy it. I really enjoy it. I like it. And then, you know, on top of it, like I said, I teach taekwondo and take taekwondo. So that really fills up my time throughout the week. And, you know, we're still working on our house, trying to get it finished. And Kaylee, she's still cruising down at the restaurant, you know, helping that place work.
What about, I don't know why you didn't put this on here, but I just thought to ask, what about, I know you love to build things. Are you still getting to do any of that? Do you have time to do that?
I haven't had time to do a lot of that recently, but maybe that's something that I can work towards in the future, because one of the things I really would love to do when I start to get older and kind of slow down is to woodwork and make stuff and maybe have my own little building that I could sell my stuff out of, because handmade furniture is, everybody, that's not going to die. I don't think anytime soon to have a good piece of handmade furniture.
Yeah.
No, the table, the tutorial center is.
Oh, it'll be there like after the building is gone. It's
a heavy duty one.
solid. Yeah, it is.
I think the Lord will take it on up to heaven. Let's just go bring it up here.
Well, I wanted to think about, maybe kids getting wild and shaking it all the time and
sitting on it,
and bumping up against it and stuff like that. So you can't really have something spindly for that.
We love it. It is like the centerpiece of our room in there. Okay, so we've already talked about we talked about awards, promotions, but just got promoted to 2nd degree black belt, and I love that. And I'm just making sure we've asked everything. One of the things we had put on there was where do you feel God leading you now? But of course, you just talked about having the wood stuff one day. But is there anything you'd like to add to it for you guys? The Kaylee and Westin party of 4?
I just hope we just all want to accomplish what we want to accomplish, and hopefully we can go down the right roads to do that. I want to hopefully start me a little woodworking shop along with teaching taekwondo, maybe running a studio or a dojo. And Kaylee, she's got so many different little things that she likes to do. There's no telling what she's going to put her time into next. She's really talented when it comes to just falling into something and doing it. She has her little strawberry and, sweet thing that she does. And
plug to Kaylee's strawberry business, chocolate dip strawberries.
But, along with the restaurant, hopefully we can keep that going for another, 20 years.
Yeah.
When I grow up, I want to be able to pull off a mustache like he does.
I know. I love his stash.
Hey, it took some work. I had to start waxing it to get it out of my lips so I'd quit chewing on it.
So, real quick, do both kids do the taekwondo thing with you?
Yes, Ava did it. She did it for a little while. She got to green belt, and then she got to where she started sparring, other students, and then I think she got popped in the nose one time, and I think that kind of a little bit too hard, which it's part of it,
right?
But she kind of, I think, got a little scared after that, so hopefully she'll get back into it in the future. If not, then whatever. She's got so many other talents that she could dive into,
like
she's
being an artist.
Yeah, she is such a little artist, and sculpture or whatever, she does all kinds of stuff with art, and she could go far into architecture, she's got the mind for it.
Yeah. And then Ezra does.
He does taekwondo now. Yes, he's in it now, and he really loves doing it. And hopefully, he'll be like his daddy and stick with it. Because I've always thought it was something that was really important for any kid to do. Not just for the discipline that it teaches and stuff like that, but also the self-defense. We're getting increasingly into a more crazy world, as the years go on. So,
and the self-defense, yes, but self-control that it teaches you as well. And we're also in a world where kids severely, and adults severely lack self-control.
Oh yeah.
And I can see how the martial arts has probably paid off in you with the self-control. You literally self-regulated on your drug use and said, hey, I can't do this anymore, self-control. Like, you're sitting here so composed and you're always so well-spoken and chill, and that comes from something.
Right.
The self-control, I think, that martial arts teaches you is just something we could all take a lesson on.
I'm just very grateful he's part of our security
Me too.
The church.
Hey, I enjoy being there. I like seeing everybody.
I know. All right.
All right, is that it?
Yeah, you're gonna. Are you gonna?
Number one, thank you so much, brother.
Well,
for
thanks
coming
for
and
having
telling
me.
your
I appreciate
story.
it,
Yeah,
guys.
thank you
That
so
was
much for coming and
very
sharing your
awesome.
story.
And we'd like to close with a prayer, if that's okay.
That's absolutely fine.
All right, Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for Westin. We thank you for the story that he has, Lord, and we just pray that you continue working in his life like you have so far and brought him to where he is today. And Lord, we just see that there's so much of a chance for him to be able to help kids, Lord, to be able to put them on the right path and be able to teach them self-control and discipline and help them to be able to become good adults, Lord. And we just pray that you continue being with him and keeping him and his family safe. And we just thank you again for him being able to come on today. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys. Well, that's it for today's podcast. Thank you so much for being here with us, and we look forward to our next episode, which airs every other Wednesday. Remember that our Be Like Berl podcast is inspired by our book character, Berl Squeever. You can get his books by logging on to our website, berlsqueever.com. Click the purchase link up top. Everyone stay safe, be like Berl, and God bless.